Hello and welcome to Michael and Ivanka's Grand Podcast, a weekly podcast where we don't have time to bring actual guests on, so we bring their words on instead. My name's Michael Forrest.
And I'm Ivanka Magic.
And this week, we're going to read out on the theme, this month's theme, March International Women's Month. We're going to read out a bit of Kate Raworth.
Kate Raworth.
Of Doughnut Economics.
Fame.
Who is, we saw at a meeting conference a couple of years ago, right?
Yes.
And what was the thing you'd found? Was it 7 something or other?
7 ways to think like a 21st century economist.
And this is the sort of in the intro of her book, Doughnut Economics.
Yeah. Who wants to be?
Oh, right. It's titled 7 Ways to Think Like a...
Yeah. But it's like it is in the intro, because the intro bit is who wants to be an economist. It's not chapter 1, it's the intro. And then so then in it, she has 7 ways to think like a 21st century economist, which I think lends itself it's quite a good overview. So if you're curious, because we mentioned the Doughnut Economics book quite a lot, and I think
I haven't read, so
I haven't read every word. So yes, we thought we could read that out, but I've got it on an actual book made of paper. Listen.
Holy crap. How are you doing?
I am doing very well, I think. This is the week in which my sister is so she has a foster kid that stays with her, and he's going to be there for a long time, and he's lovely, and now she's going to be doing one week a month. She does emergency fostering. And so last night, very late, 2 young brothers arrived from the police station. So she did an emergency flit to buy them pyjamas and things, because they have no idea what they're going to turn up with. And then this morning I persuaded my daughter that she should share her toys, and we sent over a care package of toys to play with. That was it's one of
solid.
That's them's fixed. We've shared a couple of puzzles, some books. Unfortunately, one's 7, so I'm hoping that the combination of toys I put together will be okay. But because I don't think anyone has any idea. I'm not privy to the details of why they're there. I just know that they're there, and but I think it's Nick and I were talking about this over breakfast, and he was like, it just accentuates or brings home what an amazing thing Lydia and James are doing in fostering. And then we were discussing whether or not we would be able to do it, because as part of my new project as well, I'm looking into the systems that support fostering and foster carers and all those things that the council are using. So it gives me a pause for reflection. And I think I'd be far better placed for emergency placements, short-term emergency, than for long-term, just because the way we've organised our lives is, all freelance. Let's go and be in Croatia for a bit. Let's come here for a bit. Let's do this. Let's do that. And
that's true.
My sister is not going to be able to. They're committed to this city now until their foster son turns 18 legally, but really it's forever now, because he's going to have been with them for a while. But yes, so that's my little. Okay. If you've ever thought about fostering, go and check it out. Because the interesting thing about the application process, and that's part of what was coming up this week, is that balance between efficiency and gestation period. Because you need a lot of the application process is designed not just to establish whether you are right to be fostering, but whether fostering is right for you. And it's like, I was discussing it with somebody on Tuesday, and it's like, for those of us who have been to therapy, there's this thing where, you go and do some therapy, and then you have to have some thinking time and processing time and all that. And then it's you can't speed it up. Some of it just takes the time it takes, and I think the process of becoming a foster carer is a bit like that. And so but equally there are some inefficiencies that we can mop up. But
this is something that's been on my mind, this question of efficiency, especially like from the UN report on poverty. The government is sort of so obsessed with, I've felt that government inefficiency, but actually realizing that efficiency isn't better than inefficiency.
No,
it's a strategy that has different strengths to efficiency. So it's if you're inefficient, you can there are things you can do inefficiently that you just can't do efficiently.
like get therapy.
Like get therapy, or you can't just kind of squeeze that all into a day. But I think like examples of just it comes back to that specialization question as well. Just like if you specialize to one particular strategy that requires everything, and this is probably a mistake I make as well. It's like if things don't fall precisely into place, it throws all of my plans off, which is why I get so angry about flaking, because it's like, no, well, that's everything's broken now, because I had kind of like I've been sort of operating on this efficiency mindset, but something I have been learning like recently is how to, just by being able to put something out a bit late and still feeling like it was a success.
Yeah.
It's important to be able to do that. And then also Delton Chen's work on like having an inefficient, plants versus animals. It's like animals are efficient, but it's all quite tenuous.
Yeah.
It's a sort of house of cards, whereas plants are inefficient, but they can, do all sorts of things. I don't know if that actually kind of like connects directly into your.
Oh no, I think it does.
Thing.
I think it does.
It's just the word is on my mind. I think I'm going to do a blank state on it. Imagine if we had a really, really inefficient government. But what would that mean?
Well, yeah, maybe. I think that I think what's comes up time and time again in these government. When you're doing these efficiency drives or, digital transformation to make it more efficient, is that some things absolutely, like we've spoken about this time and time again, cut and paste jobs should not exist.
Right.
Reproducing to somebody taking a bit of data from here and literally cut and pasting it into a different system. The robots are welcome to those types of work. That is what they should be doing. No human being should be subjected to have to do that kind of work. That is not satisfying. It's not it's not a good use of our skills. But there's some areas that require creative thinking and being engaged and relaxed in order to think through ideas, and a lot of that is when your life is in crisis. If somebody can give you a bit of space to breathe, you're much more able to then think through what's happening to you. And the problem, crisis hits then pressure for efficiency, and it's just compounding your stress. And it depends what sort of human you are as well.
It's brittle, and I found myself like some YouTube video auto played, which was like a robot voice reading out, like the Apple man voice reading out like some Reddit posts, and it kind of came onto this like, what are the most ridiculous kind of policies you've had to deal with in your job, and there was quite a lot of this like. They had some sort of like, if you were even 1 minute late, it would go on your permanent record. So you're actually incentivized if you were late, a little bit late, to just take the whole day off.
Wow.
In order to not kind of get hit by that policy. And there was just talking about these stories of seeing the cars coming in that had just been like, the traffic had been a bit off, and just having to like sigh and turn around and go home so that they didn't kind of have to deal with this policy. That was, and some other stupid ones. There was a company policy where the MD didn't like hearing like different music as he walked through the factory floor, because all the workers were sort of far enough away that they'd put their own music on. So it instituted a policy that everyone had to listen to the same music. Like loads of stories like that. It's come on, guys.
Yeah,
but you see that the brittleness of the policy, where you try and like eke out every last bit of efficiency from something, you end up like causing much bigger problems. Yeah. But also you end up imposing that social, because I think I kind of missed the point of some of that poverty report in the moment, but like by optimizing something, you are really imposing your values on it in a much harsher way. And if your values are a bit off, if you do think that poverty is an identity, is a personality defect, then everything you do to optimize that system is going to sort of like enforce that mentality on people. Yeah. And it's wrong. So anyway.
But I do think there's lots of things that technology is brilliant for and can help with and all that. And there's a whole swathe of the population that can be helped by these efficiencies. It's just there have to be safety nets for the people who it doesn't help.
And actually, it's probably more efficient just to give everyone some cash at some point.
I think it is, yeah. Lydia and I discussed this. She's like, if you work it through, it is probably a lot cheaper to just give certain people enough money to survive, to live, sorry, not survive, to live, and let them live.
Yeah.
If we could afford it.
And I can vouch for this, like, because I architect systems for a living. I kind of come up with architectures that fundamentally good programming is about not copying and pasting something from one place to another. It's about engineering a system where the computer internally is copying and is reusing that code, reusing that data in different ways as much as possible. But as you sort of reach a certain level of complexity, the effort required, the work, the hours and days required to create a system that is efficient in that way becomes, it's very time consuming. I personally am of the idea that if something should be automated, then you need to do that work, because there's always more complexity around the corner. But I think in terms of government, you do have to look at the profit and loss. You do have to look at the projections either way and go, okay, if we just gave everyone X amount of money versus spending billions on a system that, kind of makes this X amount more efficient, what does that actually look like in money terms? And maybe don't go with the one that...
They'll also... Yeah.
It's complicated though, isn't it?
It is complicated. And, I think one of the... I know you love a script. A bit of automation is excellent in the right place at the right time.
Yes. But again, I'll use a podcast example. I have a script that I take notes with times on them as I listen back through the episode, the first draft, and then I created a little program that lets me copy and paste that into the document that then puts the markers into the timeline of the thing so that I can just whip through them and just make all the edits. But like this week I lost half an hour just because, and which when it works means I can sort of get the podcast out super quickly, which is something I had to do by hand before. And like if I forgot to do it right, I would, the times would be off because I deleted some stuff earlier. So now the thing that is at this point in time, it was like, well, it actually was that. So if you don't put all the markers in up front, then you don't know where you are. But this week, something weird went wrong with it. And I ended up losing half an hour just trying to fix my program that makes it generally quicker. And you sort of have to say that probably I've put more effort in overall so far into making my little tool and using it. That's arguable at this point. But I tell you what, my quality of life is way better when I'm not doing the repetitive task. I'm just able to kind of slot this kind of podcast release. I made that very efficient, and that just makes me feel better.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we mustn't underestimate how much fun you have making these tools.
Do you want to start?
No, I want to ask you how you are.
Oh shit, have you not asked me how
I've just been talking about... I talked about fostering and then we went on to automation.
I don't mind. I can. Well, I'll tell you one thing.
Tell us one thing, Michael. Tell us
on the
one thing
subject of
about
automation.
yourself.
I had a dream the other night where I had a self-driving car, and so I was quite enjoying. In my dream I could drive just about, which I can't in real life. But I was just sort of like hanging out and chilling out in my car, and just like it was just like, do you want to go here? Because it was in my calendar, I guess. And I was like, yeah, sure. And that's all I did, and it's just driving me there. And then I was rummaging around in the back seat getting something. I think I'd sort of dropped my phone in the back seat at some point. And I was sort of aware that I was going past a police car, and they must have been like going, what? But there's no one driving that car. So I was sort of having fun. But then I ended up sort of getting out the car at one point, and it sort of started driving off. And then I sort of found myself running after it, going, oh my God, what are we going to do? And it kept sort of getting away. So I was just chasing my self-driving car as it disappeared off into the distance. And I couldn't stop it because I didn't have my phone on me. And I was like, oh, why haven't I got an Apple Watch on? Why am I wearing this stupid Withings thing? But yeah, it's, a portent. Goodness. Of the future, your self-driving car drives off without you. The Samsungs, that'll be like 2041. 2031. Samsung cars drive off without their owners because they've got a faulty sensor in them.
In the seat.
So there you go, that was fun. Also, I heard back from Dalton about our write-up, which he was, seemed to be pretty positive on, and said like the last paragraph could kind of describe the whole thing. So I was like, that's good to hear. And then I started trying to write a blank state script about it, and immediately was like, I don't understand this mechanism at all. I don't know how to describe how it looks in practice. And so he sent me a couple more things to read, but I'm still trying to find the time to kind of get my head around it. But he's also sent me the chapter. I'm kind of cited as one of his allies in his thing now, next to Extinction Rebellion.
Wowzers. 7 Ways to Think Like a 21st Century Economist.
From Doughnut Economics by Kate Raworth.
Yes, who we are massive fans of. Well, I am.
And she is a woman.
She's a woman. And she knows what she's talking about. Anyway,
go.
Whether you consider yourself an economic veteran or novice, now is the time to uncover the economic graffiti that lingers in all of our minds. And if you don't like what you find, scrub it out. Or better still, paint it over with new images that far better serve our needs and times.
I'm a novice. Are you a novice?
I'm a novice. Definitely. The rest of this book proposes 7 ways to think like a 21st century economist, revealing for each of those 7 ways the spurious image that has occupied our minds, how it became so powerful, and the damaging influence it has had. But the time for mere critique is past, which is why the focus here is on creating new images that capture the essential principles to guide us now. The diagrams in this book aim to summarise that leap from old to new economic thinking. Taken together, they set out, quite literally, a new big picture for the 21st century economist. So here is a whirlwind tour of the ideas and images at the heart of Doughnut Economics. First, change the goal. For over 70 years, economics has been fixated on GDP, or national output, as its primary measure of progress. That fixation has been used to justify extreme inequalities of income and wealth, coupled with unprecedented destruction of the living world. For the 21st century, a far bigger goal is needed, meeting the human rights of every person within the means of our life-giving planet, and that goal is encapsulated in the concept of the donut.
Can I just interject with something the way I heard this described very clearly the other day was, and in the context of International Women's Day month, was what does bringing up children and, having children contribute to the GDP? Nothing. Therefore, it's seen as having no value. What could be more wrong than that?
I heard her. I part listened to this book and part read it, and there's a bit where she talks about, in the corporate environment, you never have to stop and teach people, potty train people. Somebody's already done that bit. She says the challenge now is to create economies, local to global, that help to bring all of humanity into the donut's safe and just space. Instead of pursuing ever-increasing GDP, it's time to discover how to thrive in balance.
Okay. And our 7 ways to think is the next one is like a little diagram, so we can just kind of whiz through it. So change the goal from GDP, see the big picture, nurture human nature, get savvy with systems, design to distribute, create to regenerate, and be agnostic about growth. Okay.
Yeah. Growth.
Shall we? I'll take the big picture, shall I? Second, see the big picture. Mainstream economics depicts the whole economy with just one extremely limited image, the circular flow diagram. I've never seen that. Its limitations have, furthermore, been used to reinforce a neoliberal narrative about the efficiency of the market, the incompetence of the state, the domesticity of the household, and the tragedy of the commons. Its limitations have been used to reinforce. Do you know this? The term neoliberal.
Yeah.
I haven't looked it up, and it sounds like a nice thing, but I guess it's a bad thing.
Yeah, it is one. Neoliberal is one of those. It's the basic premise of neoliberal is this whole the market will balance itself out and sort itself out, and that's the. And then I listened to a talk of her. She did. It's on a podcast, an LSE podcast, and she talks about the fact that. I can't remember the years now, but a group of people came together with that sort of like the market will always be right and the market will always right itself. And then they created a little group, and then like Thatcher's first Chancellor of the Exchequer was one of this gang, and then blah, blah, blah. And so it was sort of created with a long game strategy. So get the people together, get the ideas together, and then seed those people into many organisations. But it's this thing we've already discussed, that the market is not in charge.
It does not share our values.
No, it needs regulations to make sure that it meets the needs of humanity.
Ivanka is pointing to a bit of the book. It's time to draw the economy anew, embedding it within society and within nature, and powered by the sun. This new depiction invites new narratives about the power of the market, the partnership of the state, the core role of the household, and the creativity of the commons. Third, the tragedy of the commons as well is one that, off the top of my head, I don't know.
Well, I've heard her using this phrase, and I've never particularly gone and looked it up. The phrase sounds familiar. I don't know what it means.
The tragedy of the commons is a term used in social science to describe a situation in a shared resource system where individual users acting independently according to their own self-interest behave contrary to the common good of all users by depleting or spoiling that resource through their collective action. Okay, so it just means...
she uses in her talk that I listened to recently, open source, Creative Commons, all that stuff as a counter argument to this tragedy of the commons business, where we mustn't create common spaces because we're all going to fuck them up type, which seems to be like a lay summary. This is why you can't have nice things.
Yeah, I hate that feeling.
Third, nurture human nature. At the heart of 20th century economics stands the portrait of rational economic man. He has told us that we are self-interested, isolated, calculating, fixed in taste, and dominant over nature, and his portrait has shaped who we have become. But human nature is far richer than this, as early sketches of our new self-portrait reveal. We are social, interdependent, approximating, fluid in values, and dependent upon the living world. What's more, it is indeed possible to nurture human nature in ways that give us a far greater chance of getting into the donut's safe and just space.
Referring to the donut, which I guess has been covered already in the book. The donut is this diagram, which we have used before in a podcast thumbnail, which I guess no one sees, but you should look that up and follow along. By the way, we put the link in the. So I guess you need the book. But I think you can read this much in the iBook preview if you're on an Apple thing. But what I just wanted to say about that kind of portrait of the rational economic man, this self-interested, isolated, calculating, is that even like I've talked before about like game theory in like genetic. I mean, this doesn't even understand like the Richard Dawkins stuff that about the we're not designed to exploit to screw each other over.
No.
We're not designed for individuals to thrive. We're designed for our DNA to thrive, which is a different challenge and is why we are programmed with cooperative behaviors. And like we've talked about this before, but we, our emotions and, social drives are there for a reason that is it's the selfish gene, not the selfish man.
Right.
And if you conflate those two, you get it very, very, very wrong.
She bangs on about this portrait of rational economic man as well in her in this talk. Don't know how come anyway. And she it's this idea that if that's the drawing, then we become the drawing.
Yeah. These things can reinforce themselves.
So,
but yeah, like our humanity also covers our emotional reactions to things which are baked into us by millennia. But the trouble is now they're triggered by weird stuff. But our humanity is our rationality and our emotions together. You can't just take one without the other, because then you don't have humanity. You have like some sort of weird psychotic robot, which is what kind of our current value system seems to be when it comes to economics.
Yeah. It's like, yeah.
Fourth, get savvy with systems. The iconic crisscross of the market's supply and demand curves is the first diagram that every economics student encounters. I've not seen this, but so supply and demand, supply goes up as demand, I don't know, demand goes up and supply goes up. I don't know. Crisscross, why do they crisscross? Sorry, I've just got to check this. Supply. I can't see the graph because I'm on a stupid Apple book.
So basically, it's the idea that the more there is of something, the less people want it.
Is that?
Supply goes up, demand goes down.
I don't understand that.
Well, it's economic. I don't know. Hang on.
So the price goes down.
Oh, price. Yes, price.
Demand goes down.
Maybe I should go and get those glasses.
So that's micro. Demand and supply. What are these axes? P goes up, Q.
If demand is high and supply is low, then price will be high. But if supply is high and demand is low, then price will be low.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, that makes sense. It's rooted in misplaced 19th century metaphors of mechanical equilibrium. A far smarter starting point for understanding the economy's dynamism is systems thinking, summed up by a simple pair of feedback loops. Putting such dynamics at the heart of economics opens up many new insights, from the boom and bust of financial markets to the self-reinforcing nature of economic inequality and the tipping points of climate change. It's time to stop searching for the economy's elusive control levers and start stewarding it as an ever-evolving complex system.
Well, then she's got a graph that goes on about eggs and chickens crossing the road. So you got some eggs and some chickens. So the more eggs there are, the more chickens there are. The more chickens there are, the more eggs there are. Maybe. No?
Yeah,
eggs
and
make
then
chickens.
On the other side, road crossings.
And then you've got, so the more chickens there are, the more chickens cross the road, and the more road crossings there are, the more I don't know.
Well, there's a dynamic complexity is that it's like a chain, the diagram becomes, and then you sort of get the idea of sort of interconnections and how things kind of start to
So the word
kind of
more
affect each other.
is not necessary here. It's not about more. Eggs do chickens, chickens make eggs, chickens cross the road.
The dynamic effect of more chickens also touches the road crossings, but it will also touch other things, and road crossings will touch the next thing maybe, and then the next thing will touch the next thing, and I think that's a dynamic, complex system. I don't know if it.
But this, I think,
does she say?
This self-reinforcing nature of economy. Because she's arguing that the thing...
ever-evolving complex system. Oh, so she's talking about a simple pair of feedback loops.
Yeah, so it's not growth. It's not more eggs give more chickens give me. It's just that eggs do chickens, chickens do eggs, eggs do chickens, chickens do eggs. There's no more in it. But the crossings of the roads means that they don't... maybe this is...
No, it says, she says summed up.
She
says summed up by a simple pair of feedback loops.
Yeah,
but
because
I think that
if chickens cross the road, then some chickens are going to get run over. There's not just going to be more and more chickens crossing the road, because if there's like loads of chickens crossing the road, then loads of them are going to die.
I don't know if this
Am I helping?
Yeah, definitely. It's very helpful. Let's talk about designing to distribute.
Need to... What we're establishing here is that there's more homework to be done.
Yeah.
Okay. 5th, design to distribute. In the 20th century, one simple curve, the Kuznets curve, whispered a powerful message on equality. It has to get worse before it can get better, and growth will eventually even it up. But inequality, it turns out, is not an economic necessity. It's a design failure.
Design motherfucking failure.
Because I did listen to this part of her talk. This is about trickle down. The idea is that, if once you get more and more rich people, they'll bring up the people from below.
Trickle down.
And that ain't happened.
Not happening.
21st century economists will recognise that there are many ways to design economies to be far more distributive of the value that they generate. An idea best represented as a network of flows. It means going beyond distributing income to exploring ways of redistributing wealth, particularly the wealth that lies in controlling land, enterprise, technology, knowledge, and the power to create money.
So, we're currently redistributing income, but we need to be redistributing wealth.
Well, we're currently not really Kuznets.
She said going beyond redistributing income to exploring ways of redistributing wealth. So even if there is an attempt to...
Oh, yes, I see, yeah.
Like tax, I guess, is that, if we kind of just tax, income tax, and then blah, blah, blah. But the, that sort of accumulated wealth that lies in all these other things needs to be redistributed. Case in point, I saw on Facebook that Germany is just having a referendum on making being a large landlord illegal, like a landlord with a load of properties. They're having a referendum on whether that should be illegal.
Wowzers.
So that's what we're talking about. I can imagine governments doing things like that.
Wow. How would you unbecome one of those? Do you have to sell off your properties?
Well, let me just find the post. But I think that's the sort of action that I think this implies.
That's very modern, isn't it?
Yeah, Berlin set to hold referendum.
It's Berlin, though. Berlin, it's a city, not the country.
Berlin set to hold referendum on banning big landlords and nationalising private rented housing. Sounds good.
Sounds good.
It's big landlords, so small landlords. But yeah, like if you're just like buying up all the land, we're going to stop it.
Well, there are lots of problems.
See what the result is.
Yeah. There are lots of problems in this country as well with that sort of like people who own freeholds, for example, as a method of investment.
Yeah, no, it's everywhere. It's like absolutely, and it's this hoarding and sort of like reinforcing of your own. As soon as you've got money, you get more money. As soon as you haven't got money, you can't get any money ever. Like you're just paying interest your whole life. Sixth, create to regenerate. Economic theory has long portrayed a clean environment as a luxury good, affordable only for the well-off. This view was reinforced by the environmental Kuznets curve, which once again whispered that pollution has to get worse before it can get better, and growth will eventually clean it up. But there is no such law. Ecological degradation is simply the result of degenerative industrial design. This century needs economic thinking that unleashes
regenerative design in order to create a circular, not linear economy, and to restore humans as full participants in Earth's cyclical processes of life.
So someone just, this Kuznets curve, I've got the Wikipedia page up. This is what someone's just said, oh no, this is going to be like this. As purely just to manipulate people?
It sounded to me like in the talk, and I haven't done any follow-up reading, but my understanding was that an experiment, he did some experiment. He had a set of data, but the data wasn't longitudinal enough. So within a short, in a snapshot of what he looked at, he drew a conclusion that became truth, and therefore, and then, but it's so, it's...
Well, its Wikipedia page goes... Kuznets ratio, 1, 2, criticisms, 3, like just starts with all the problems with it and then goes into like some kind of caveats. But it's like...
I was watching something on Netflix last night about being fat, and it talked about the fact that at the same time, that part of the problem with obesity is the sugar consumption, and it talked about the fact that at the same time there were two competing theories. One, that being unhealthy was all about fat in your diet, and one was all about sugar in your diet.
Yeah.
And the fat one won.
Lost. The
fat one won. So loads of low-fat food with high sugar, and in fact there was the person who won. Like, it was much more about, that's why Delton Chen not talking about what he's doing is not good. Yeah, if what he's doing is good, you've got to be out there talking about it. The best, I mean, you can be dismissive of marketing, but you've got to get the power behind you to get your science adopted.
Yeah, and this is something. Yeah, like no one, like Isaac Newton wasn't the first genius to come up with these ideas. He was just a very good self-promoter and probably had a bit of like privilege to be able to sort of spend time talking about it. Okay. 7th, be agnostic about growth. One diagram in economic theory is so dangerous that it is never actually drawn, the long-term path of GDP growth. Mainstream economics views endless economic growth as a must, but nothing in nature grows forever, and the attempt to buck that trend is raising tough questions in high-income but low-growth industries. It may not be hard to give up having GDP growth as an economic goal, but it is going to be far harder to overcome our addiction to it. Today we have economies that need to grow, whether or not they make us thrive. What we need are economies that make us thrive, whether or not they grow. That radical flip in perspective invites us to become agnostic about growth and to explore how economies that are currently financially, politically, and socially addicted to growth could learn to live with or without it. And we've covered growth a lot recently, so Kate's already been talking about it. She's getting it out there. Growth. That thing of trees we don't grow forever, otherwise we'd all be freakish giants stumbling over things and nothing would work. Our houses would be too small.
Yeah. And nobody would want to play with us.
That was so that, I mean, that's the 7 tenets of Kate Raworth's book, which sounds like we should all have read it.
Yeah, we need to read more of it, or read the bits I need to read more of it again in more detail. That's the thing about books that are going to learn you something. You have to have a couple of runs at them sometimes.
I'm still in the middle of bullshit jobs, so I'll get to this.
But I need to understand the chicken and eggs and road crossing bit. That's the bug.
Well, no, she's just saying that it's a system. It's not just a XY curve. Like, it's like, get away from this simplistic picture of it and start thinking about it in terms of systems. And I think she says, like, that's a summary of how you start thinking about systems. But I don't think you need to like decode that. I'm sure decoding that particular one might help, and you can find a YouTube video on it. But it's really that these things are multiple. It's not like there's just an XY axis going. If one goes up, the other goes down, and that's all there is to it, which I think is the outdated way of thinking about it.
Okay.
No?
All right. I'll have a
That's
think
what
about
I think
that.
that is.
What I
So
think
you don't need
about
to read
that.
it. Just let me yell at you. We're so out of time.
We are out of time. We're out of time.
So thanks for listening to us reading out other people's stuff. Hope there's no copyright concerns. As I was thinking about reading out the whole thing, it's like, is that just, especially if you're getting money for it, is that okay? I don't know. I think it's valuable, but to the authors of it as well. But I don't think we're going to make a Kate Raworth audiobook. There probably already is an audiobook of this.
There's probably a... Oh, yeah, that... Anyway, I don't know. As long as we... I don't know.
Thanks for listening. If you like the podcast,
yeah.
Go to grandpodcast.com. What?
Well, go to grandpodcast.com, subscribe. I'm going to do Michael's bit this evening.
Oh, yeah, subscribe.
Subscribe.
Don't subscribe.
Go and subscribe.
Don't subscribe to the podcast, will ya?
Subscribe, tell your friends, listen to stuff, tweet about it, write reviews and ratings on whatever platform you listen to. You can also go to michaelforrestmusic.com where you can, because Michael is the musician who makes all the music on our podcast that is used.
I've done it.
And it's very good.
Michael is the... Yeah.
Are you the musician? What are you? Are you going to do some self-deprecating?
I was going to do some self-deprecation. And I was like, shut up, Michael. You can find Ivanka on Twitter, and she's a very successful Twitterer. You should read her tweets.
Yes.
I think you're going to need to pin a new tweet soon, though.
I can't. But then I'll never find that
Trump one.
I mean, I have thought about it because I think my war one is better,
right?
In many ways, and obviously more current, more However, I did accidentally get tweeted by the President of the United States of America.
Yeah, but he's a twat.
I know, but I was watching somebody. I read a tweet the other day. She was like, "Oh, I went on ITV on Good Morning Britain and talked about climate change," and I was like, "Yeah, I did that 2 years ago." It's like because and I poop. What's his face? That miserable faced man that went, did you get woken up by your notifications? I was like, no, because I'm not an idiot like what you are. And let me talk to you about climate change. Those are my exact words.
Ivanka's a very famous Twitterer, and I was very proud when I saw her in the metro. Almost as proud as she was when she saw my dad in the metro.
It's true. Is there something really nice about seeing people in the papers go, oh.
I was like, she is gonna I think behind every great can I be on your team when you run?
Yes, you can.
Okay, good. In the marathon. Right, thanks. For Congress.
Yes, for Congress, the United States of America.
United Britain. Who knows what Britain's going to look like in 6 months' time?
I think United Nations is more my bag. I'm not really interested in countries. They're very boring.
Well, that's because you're a globalist by the sound of it. So
yeah, that's true. I am. I'm a universalist. It's so arbitrary. Anyway, I've got to take my passport again into Sussex University to prove to them that in the last 2 years I haven't ceased to be a British citizen and I still have a right to work.
Cool.
It's like, what the fuck?
They're just going through foreign names. Oh, there's a foreign-looking name.
This thing is a policy, isn't it? Right to work. Must check right to work. How can my right to work expire?
And on that note...
Yes.
Find out next week. Thanks for listening.
Bye. Bye.